Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of Building a Clone Base. As a recap for last week's update, I managed to get a ton of work done here on the Cut LaQuane's story arc side of things by getting some crops in for his farm. Then I also worked on the cascading path that's sort of going to roll down the hill there, as you can see, and carry on to the end of the mock. Now, the other thing I did is worked on a prototype for how the cobblestone city streets are going to look behind the base wall, and I'm going to fix that up a little bit and carry it on through the base. But first off is we have to figure out how we're going to build the turbolasers and some anti-air defense. Now at first I thought I'd use this alt build from Lego Men 360, and I thought I'd just plopping off the cannon from this and throwing it on the wall, but I realized it just wasn't quite scaled right, and I thought it'd be fun to create something of my own anyway. So we're going the custom route with this one, and we're going to be taking the general design of some classic turbo lasers you'd see on maybe the Death Star or something. So one thing I used for the cannons themselves was this modified plate with the bars on them. I got that from the Staps that I parted out from the latest clone battle packs, and then I just got some greebling and paneling on the sides there so I can add some details afterwards. And then of course I just had to tile everything off and add some cool details with some ingots and some vents, and even that little whip piece as some electrical work there. So that was cool. And then of course I had to put the little spinning thing on it so it could rotate, and luckily I had and made sure I had all the right parts to make two exactly identical ones of this. So that's how it looks. And this is actually inspired by 1x1 Brick. He's a fellow mock builder, and I took inspiration from this still from one of his latest videos. So that is how it looked. And then of course I had to figure out exactly how and where I was going to build up the sides of the wall so I could place them on there. I just pretty simply built them up and tiled them off, and then of course I've got those little spindle things right on there, and then now we can just go ahead and add the turbo lasers. And this is always just a satisfying part, being able to spin it around like this and taking a look at your finished product, especially when you go a custom route with something like this, is really cool. So very happy with the look of those. And I also like the fact that I went dark gray. That sort of matches those pillars and offsets the light gray on this wall. I originally built them as light gray and put them on there, and they didn't look great. So I'm happy with that decision and aesthetic choice. Now I think it's time to finally get around to finishing this bridge. And that's going to include the railings and the end here, especially the end, because I want to be able to do the cobblestone in the city. Can't really do that until this bridge is securely in. Now once I took it off, I realized that this left side is exactly one plate higher than the pillars and the other side of the bridge. So pretty simple fix, but kind of a little bit annoying. I just got to go in and add one plate. So I went ahead and did that on the pillars and quickly did that on the right side of the bridge, and then at least they'll be the exact same height, and I won't have to worry about it being offset, even though it's not quite securely in there still, which is something I'll talk about later. But now I just gotta go ahead and tile off everything under where the bridge is going to sit, and then I just want to carry on that same pattern with the dirt up to and where the cobblestone is going to start. And talking about cobblestone, I do want to get started on the rest of the cobblestone, but I'm waiting on a parts order. So in the meantime, I want to focus on getting the railings for the bridge built. And I'm just going to go with a very simple design here, just some grates on the ends, and then I'm going to be in the middle of these two end grate pieces on each side. I'm going to be putting all these 1x2 slopes on some 1x brick, and then just attaching it on there. Gives a nice sleek look, and I think it beefs it up and finishes the bridge quite nicely. I just went ahead off camera and added both sides on there. And the one thing was I didn't want the railings to be too tall and take away from the scale of the bridge, so that was a design choice there. And then of course now it's time to get moving on to the base itself. One thing you'll notice as I'm tiling off this first bay area of the base is the fact that I'm using a lot of light gray plate, and it's because I want to go in and add a ton of detail work probably in the coming weeks with clone accessories and fuel tanks and weapon racks and helmet racks and all that kind of stuff that you would see within a base. I want to add that, so there's lots of studs available for that kind of thing in there. And it also saved a lot of gray tile, which is very valuable. Like I said, I'm sort of running low on stuff like the light and the dark gray tile, so whenever I can just throw studs in there, I try to. Talking about light gray tile, I want to go ahead and do this sidewalk before I get to the cobblestone. I just want to put it in and see how it looks first. So quickly just putting it on there and making some little flower beds outlined by those sand blue 1x tiles I think look pretty cool. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add this little olive green bushel, and I made 3 of them, and I think that looks super cool. It's sort of different from the plant life that's on the planet. And then the other thing is my parts order finally came in. This is 15 16 by 16 gray base plates, and then believe it or not, there's like 700 pieces in this little sandwich looking baggie of tiles. So that's exactly what we need to get started on the cobblestone, and part of that parts order was a bunch of dark gray and light gray ingots. So I want to figure out how I'm going to do this a little bit better. So first of all, I want to save all my tile. I'm going to be using these ingots for the cobblestone. And first of all, I'm just going through and evenly spacing out a bunch of them. And you'll see later on I add a lot more because I have a certain amount of the sand blue tile. Then the other thing is the jumper plates. I want high traffic areas to have jumper plates, because I'd like to add some action poses and stuff like that. That's a lot easier to do with a stud there. Now I've got this fairly large bin of sand blue 1x1 tiles, as I said, and as I was doing this, I added probably 200 more ingots just to cover up some of this space, because I knew looking at it I would run out of the tiles. This is a look at how the new cobblestone looks. I think it looks fantastic. It's pretty stark contrast with the dirt, but that's just part of how I wanted the design of this MOC to be. I want the city to have this clean aesthetic and this nice blue cobblestone, and then for outside the city it'd be like this dirt road. So you might agree with that aesthetic choice. At the end of the day, it's a lot of studs to cover up, and to do all this with just gray tile or something would be way too expensive. So I'm glad I went this route. I think it looks fantastic. As I'm doing it here, this took like 2 or 3 hours to get all these 1x tiles in, and then I also added a lot of those quarter round dark gray tiles over right behind the wall, because that's where I want sort of little market to go to. So like a farmer's market could be there. So I'll show it on the camera in a second. You can see all these little half round tiles right there, and that's going to be like this sort of common area where all these farmer stand market is. But this is a look at how much I had left. Literally I was just barely had enough to complete it, and ultimately I really love the way this turned out. The other thing is addressing these spots where I didn't put the tile. And first of all, this middle area is going to be this podium where Palpatine and some of the troopers are going to be standing. He's going to be addressing the public right there. And then over here in the left corner is going to be this bar. Obviously there's going to be a lot of creative liberty with this. I want to see how big I can build it, and obviously going to add lights and everything like that. But ultimately that was a wrap on this week's update. I put like literally thousands of pieces down, and I'm super happy with the progress this week. I also love the look of these Turbolasers. They turned out a lot better than I thought they would, and definitely going custom route more often. But anyways guys, that's going to do it for today's update. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.